You are listening to Lovesick, the podcast, where we dive into health, wellness, and relationships and their impact on the world. Come be a part of the discussion and join our community by following us on YouTube, Instagram, and listening wherever you get your favorite podcasts. Enjoy the show. Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the Lovesick podcast. I'm your host, Jada. With me is Dorothea, and we have Michael. And today we have an awesome guest. Her name is Brandie Bishop from the National Black Doulas Association. Hello.
Hello, everyone.
Brandie.
Hi, Brandie.
How's it going?
I'm doing good. Staying busy. As I'm sure you guys know, with doulas, there's a lot of newness coming and a lot of new things going down the pipes in a variety of different states. And so we're trying to keep our hands on all of it and making sure that our community gets the best access. So staying busy, but doing well.
So for those of us out there who do not know what a doula is, could you tell us what
A doula is, yeah, of course. And so it's funny because when I first became a doula, this was a question I got very often from my family. They're like, "What you doing?" And so when it comes to the space of maternal health, when we're defining what a doula is, we're looking at somebody who's doing emotional support, educational support, resources, and so not a medical provider, right? So we have our doctors, we have our midwives. Our doula is going to be somebody who's supporting in those arenas where we might not always find that extra assistance from our core providers, right? So wanting somebody that's there to help us with those comfort measures during labor and delivery, that can be a huge part of it. But also what I find in our community for Black and Brown families is that we're needing somebody to help us with that educational piece. And I seen a quote recently, and I've heard it before, but it just was really resonating with me because we're working on a few elements of our curriculum currently. And it was, if you don't know your choices, do you really have them? And I feel like that's altogether so true within the birth work space for Black and Brown families. If you don't know that the choice even exists, you don't actually have the choice. And so I find that a lot of Black and Brown doulas, when they're working with families, we're trying to make sure they know their choices, right? What is, what is a squat bar? What is a hip squeeze? What are these things? And do you have access to them? And if you do, how do you access it, right? And so a lot of education, comfort measures during labor and delivery, as well as the postpartum period. And I feel like, unfortunately, we talk a lot about birth and we leave that postpartum period to his lonesome. And unfortunately, it is not always a positive outcome, especially within our community. And so we do quite a bit of planning for postpartum, talking about the mental health aspects, the healing of the body postpartum, as well as how do you heal while caring for a new human that can't do anything for itself, right? So that life balance of, that new normal. So yeah, having somebody to really walk with you through that process is kind of what you're going to be looking towards a doula to do.
That's pretty heavy.
That is very heavy.
Yeah, it's such a unique space, right, to occupy. It's I've done it. This is literally year 13 for me, and so I've been doing it for quite a while. And I will tell you the things that I've been able to witness, and just the amount of joy of seeing a new life come into the world, but also just like the light bulb moments, right? Like, oh, I didn't know that I could do that, or oh, I wasn't aware that was an option that I had. And so yeah, it's pretty incredible work.
How did you get into this?
Yeah, and so my background, when I was in college, I did a internship at World Relief, which is a refugee resettlement agency. They do other work in different countries around the world for like water, economic resources, in a lot of different parts of Africa and Asia. And so that job, the first time when I interned, I'm like, I love this. Like, I absolutely knew that I wanted to do something social services related that's very heavily within my family. My mom is an LCSW. She's done therapy since I was a kid. And so feelings and emotions and resources are very much a part of my world. And then in general, a lot of the women in my family have done something within the helping profession. And so I remember going to school and thinking, like, all of the people I would hang out with and like the people that I was roommates with, they all were like going to be teachers or doctors. Like they had a very specific outcome. And they would ask me like, well, Brandie, what are you going to do? I'm like, I love people. I like kids. I like development. I have no clue. And so I did this internship. I started to work with families from different parts of the world. And when I graduated, the lady who had the position, she reached out. She said, Brandie, I'm looking to leave Work Relief. Would you be interested in my role? And I'm like, of course. And so went down, interviewed, and I've been here as a transplant AT alien ever since. I'm from Detroit, Michigan originally. And so yeah, been here. And when I first started to work with refugee families, the title of my role was intensive medical case manager. And so half of my job, I worked with refugees from around the world who had unfortunately been parts of either torture or trauma from different war-torn countries and things like that. So gut-wrenching things like stories and just hearing about how families have been torn apart because of war, hearing about people being in refugee camps for so many years before ever making it to America, and whole families kind of being destroyed for one reason or another based on just conflicts throughout the world. And then the other half of my job was working with pregnant women. So the World Health Organization considers pregnancy to be an intensive medical scenario. And so for that reason, I worked with intensive cases that were both, as a result of torture and trauma, but then also intensive cases that were really just pregnant moms. And so that became like the joy of my job. Like when I came in, I knew that I had these really tough cases to work with, but then I got to spend all of this time with these amazing birthers from around the country. And it really helped me to deep dive into birth. And I was like, oh, I am definitely involved in this. Whatever I have to do, sign me up. And so I started to research and figured out, while I didn't want to go to medical school, that I was wanting to really be a part of moving the needle when it comes to maternal mortality in the United States, and specifically for Black and brown women, right? And so doing the research, started to, my own little doula journey and doing my trainings and getting all of my reading and things like that. And so, yeah, I started with refugee families. And to this day, I still try as much as possible to reach back to the refugee and immigrant community while we're working simultaneously with Black and brown faces here in America.
You're a busy woman.
Oh, my grandparents would agree every time I talk to them. It's like, you need to sit down. But I love it. I love it. And I think one of the things that my family thinks is very unique is the fact that I don't actually have any children, and I don't plan on having any children. I like my house nice and quiet. But one of the elements within being a doula, especially for Black and brown doulas, that I found to be very, very cultural is that sisterhood dynamic, right? I have a sister. When I was 18, I was able to kind of step in and be a pseudo mom for her. And so we've been rocking it out, and she just graduated college last year. And that relationship really spearheaded not only, so I was interested in birth, but then when I started to look and think about what it looked like to be a doula or someone who really walked with Black and brown women, what I found is that sisterhood was that bond, right? And so while I'm not, I love babies. I tell people all the time, but as a doula, I don't show up for babies. I show up for families. I show up to make sure our birthers and even our partners, right? They know how to show up for their, spouse or whoever their significant other is. And so, and I really learned that with working with refugee families around the world. So much emphasis is put on the family, whereas here in America, we put so much emphasis on the baby. I love babies. Right. But everybody loves babies. And so families and partners and, birthers, they're the ones who need that extra amount of love. Because you take a baby into any room, everybody's going to be ooh and ah. But birthers who just, went through this exhausting pregnancy to then go through labor to then have a baby, they're the ones that need this extra, love and affection. Mm-hmm. And so I definitely find that to be the space that I like to feel.
Yeah. I can see that you definitely have the personality, and you can tell that you exude that caring, like compassionate type of personality, where you would actually be of help and a benefit to a mother who just gave birth. Yeah. Because like you said, a lot of times they're focused on the baby, but there's nobody there emotionally for the mom. Yeah. And if I had to have a doula, you would be it, because Yeah,
Thank you.
just
That's
because, yeah, I mean, just because of, just that feeling that
nice.
you would give as far as support to another woman. You know what I mean?
Mhm. Yeah,
Yeah.
it's important. It's important work, and I know so many amazing doulas, and I definitely we're on a mission to make sure as many people know about doulas, and then are able to, as a result, take part in that model of care where it's holistic, right? It's not just you come in, we talk to you for 15 minutes about just your health. Like, we know that stress factors, especially during pregnancy, could be in our personal life. Like if you and your spouse are kind of having a disagreement and it goes on, that can affect, the way that your pregnancy, like your blood pressure and just the way that you process being. So we're not just looking at, hey, medically, are you okay? Are you doing well? Are you not just functioning, but are you thriving through this pregnancy and this postpartum experience? And I do think having somebody, because the relationship between a birther and their doula is a unique relationship. So having
Right.
somebody, to your point, that's able to process some of that emotional stuff, right? I always tell people that doulas we don't supply guarantees, right? I can't guarantee anything when it comes to birth, but that babies have to come out. That's all I can guarantee, right? I don't know. I can't guarantee you how they're gonna come out, what time they go. Because mom's like, but Brandie, I'm 40 weeks pregnant. I'm like, well, now we gonna have to, pay attention to this
Right.
baby. They'll let us know when they're ready to come out. And so I can't supply any of those guarantees. I always tell my clients that you're gonna be well informed so you can make the best decisions for you and your baby, right? That's number one. We want to make sure you're well informed, because what I would do, it is not a factor. This is, you have the information, so you make the best decision, right? So that's the first piece. And then secondary to that, after we know that you have the pieces to the pie to make the best decision, in the aftermath, I find that no matter how I give birth, as birthers, that if I was heard and I was seen during my birthing experience, I'm okay. I've had moms who unfortunately might have been had either pre-existing medical conditions or have an emergency, where an emergency C-section is the best route for mom and for baby. And typically you'll see a lot of people talk about, oh, this was terrible, it was traumatic. But we find that if you're heard, if you're seen, like if we have to have an emergency C-section, let's play your favorite song. Let's FaceTime your mom. Let's, if you have any kind of spiritual or religious practice, let's do that beforehand. Maybe we'll talk to the doctor about, hey, instead of directly taking baby over to the warmer, can mom see baby, as soon as baby emerges, even if it's a C-section. So there's always things that you can do, but unfortunately, oftentimes we don't challenge that. We're just like, oh, whatever everybody else is doing, which can be traumatic, right?
Right.
If my experience, I show up, I feel like even though I didn't get plan A, my doctor listened to me, my doctor explained things thoroughly to me, so I knew what to expect, and I was loved on and had somebody to talk about, okay, we're not going with plan A. It makes me feel anxious, but I thoroughly understand plan B, so I feel ready, right, to take on that challenge. And I think that that's the difference when you add a doula to the equation. Plan A is not always achievable, but you at least can have a very, very well thought out plan B.
Brandie, I have a two-part question actually. The first one, how does one select a doula that's
Mm.
appropriate for them? And then also, at what stage in their pregnancy do you recommend that they have one?
Yeah, that's really great. And so what I tell people is, one, let's do the stage first. So the stage that you should access or reach out to a doula. I have had people reach out to me before they even pregnant. So I
Oh,
think that as soon as you start thinking about having a baby, you need to start researching doulas, right? That's my personal opinion, but I do
okay.
think, especially if you have a specific doula in mind, because keeping in mind that, calendars book up and we can only take on so many births a month to make sure we're giving quality care. When
Mhm.
I was doing like full-time birth work, could only do about 4 births per month in order for me to make sure I made it to each birth and everybody got a good quality of care. And so reach out as soon as possible. Like I said, I've had, especially some of my moms who are on a fertility journey. So maybe they're doing IVF or they're doing other, things to help with fertility. So they're practicing and they know that they want to, become pregnant. So they might reach out to me then. I've even, been a doula through IVF processes. And so it's, never too soon, in my opinion. You want to reach out, you want to go ahead and vet your team in we always talk about the fact that when it comes to your birth work team, you hire people and you can also fire people, right? And that's your OB, that's your midwife, that's your doula. And so you definitely want to vet these people. These are people who are going to be with you during one of the most intimate times in your life. They're going to see a lot of parts of you that other people won't see. And so what I tell people is to interview as many doulas as you can, until you find somebody that really resonates with you. A lot of doulas, if not, I would beg to say maybe 75%, if not a little bit more than that, of the doulas who are doing this like entrepreneurial style and have their own businesses, they have free consultations. So I tell my clients, even if you did a consultation with me and it's your first one, I'm going to tell you, go ahead and go do two other consultations. I want you to feel good about this decision, because this is not just like we're going to get coffee. This is like we're going to have a baby. And so I want to make sure that you feel good about that decision and what that looks like. And so, yeah, interview. And, like I said, a lot of doulas have wonderful practices, but in order for you to know that, if you interview them, you can ask them questions. On the MBDA's website, we actually have a list of questions you, as a parent, you should be asking or can ask during your interview. And so we can always, share that with you all as well. But on our website, we do have a list of questions that will be a great guide to start that conversation.
Oh, great. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's important. People don't realize the resource, right?
Yeah.
The doula can be. And I think you just gave everybody a real good idea, the before, during, and after, because in our society, the before and after almost never get talked about.
Never.
And what are some of the things you wish people knew and that you love bringing to people for information?
Yeah. So, Michael, I will tell you, as a doula, so this is going to be an unpopular opinion, I will say. So as a doula, most people, when you hear about birth work, one of the buzzwords or things that you hear talked about the most is a birth plan. This is a newer concept, but definitely a concept that is very entrenched in our birth work system now. Even without a doula being present, you might have an OB that even asks, like, hey, what's your birth plan? Like, this is a newer term, but very much embedded within the culture of obstetrics and gynecology now. And so I love birth plans, right? I'm a doula. I love building birth plans. But to your point, Michael, one of the things that I wish more and more people accessed or gave more time to is a postpartum plan, right? So one of the things that we do, we build birth plans, but all of the people who take our trainings, we also here in Atlanta, we have an agency of about 10 doulas. And so while we do birth planning, we make it incredibly we make our clients incredibly conscious of the fact that is not where your journey ends, right? Having a baby is like such the end and beginning of a journey. Like, if anything were more like, oh, you started and finished something, like, yeah, you're no longer pregnant, but you also now have a baby. And so these are two things can be true at the same time. You're finishing something big, but also starting a very big new journey, no matter what number baby it is, right? And so, yeah, I wish that more people took postpartum more seriously, especially here in America, because the unfortunate truth is, as a nation, we are just stressed out. We just moving and grooving, just trying to, and it's hard for that way of life to work well in the postpartum healing journey, right? Postpartum is a time, and you'll see it time and time again around the world, where so many cultures take time to rest, and people bring you meals and you relax. And here in America, it's like you have a baby, they send you home. The next thing I know, you up washing dishes and folding clothes. There's not any real established time frame, and as a result, there's some kind of badge of honor when it comes to like, oh, I just had a baby, but I'm out here doing, when that's not good for your body. We know scientifically that's not a positive thing, and it can honestly have a longer term impact when we don't take the time to heal well. Then down the road, maybe 2 years, we're having continued either health and or mental health issues because we didn't pay enough attention to our body during that healing season. And so birth plans are great, but I am on a mission to make postpartum plans just as popular, because I find that they're definitely needed. And within that plan, I feel like it's one of the things that we try to do is bring in this idea that you're not doing it alone. Like it, you know, I feel like the old adage of it takes a village has kind of went out the window. But during postpartum time, we try to really, really make sure people know it really does take a village, and you need to lean into your resources, especially when you have family that wants to help out. We have so many times where a family's like, oh yeah, my aunt said if I need anything, but then they don't tell their auntie nothing. Like, tell auntie to bring over a pot of soup, because when you come home from the hospital, you're gonna be tired and you're gonna need, you know, something. Or like, oh, my cousin said if I need, yeah, okay, so this is a list of things we need. These are people who've reached out. We're gonna go ahead and connect it. And so just making sure that we give ourselves grace, and that we're planning to give grace, right? If you plan ahead, it's a little bit easier, because understandably, after you have a baby, your life and your world is like, okay, this baby all day, every day. And so planning for this ahead of time definitely helps for a ease of transition. And while this is like, of course, something I'm just passionate about, is also very science driven, right? So much of science, when we're talking about the maternal mortality crisis that our country is in general, but then specifically for Black and Brown women, oftentimes people don't know when they calculate the numbers, the CDC is not just looking at when you are giving birth, right? Actively giving birth, or maybe 3 months. No, this time frame that they're discussing when they talk about maternal mortality is from the time you conceive up until 1 year after. And a lot of people don't realize that a lot of our numbers, when we're talking about numbers increasing and the issues that we're having, we're seeing more and more issues in postpartum than in the pregnancy or immediate laboring, right? This means that we have moms or birthers leaving hospitals and then having pulmonary embolisms, or having issues with clotting, or having issues with infection. And a lot of people don't think about that. That's still a part of maternal mortality, because this is as a result of you giving birth. And we find that those factors really rear their head when we don't have people paying attention to their body, resting. You know, I can't feel that my left leg has been numb all day if I'm not taking time to evaluate, how am I feeling today? Like, is my breathing okay? Did I eat enough today? Am I taking in enough nutrition? Things like that. So I always encourage our birthers, hey, take some time, slow down, and that could truly save your life. Literally just slowing down, paying attention to your body can save your life, because then you'll know before it gets too bad, right? If your blood pressure or you're having a headache, it's one that those are indicators, right? These are signs that something might not be great. But if you miss those signs, those first initial warning signs, when you should be calling the doctor or going to emergency, then we find ourselves in a situation where we might have waited too long. And then we have these crises where unfortunately moms every day are losing their life. But I do think that postpartum period, that was a lot to say. Postpartum, Michael, please tell people they need to focus on postpartum.
Oh, I'm with you, Brandie. I mean, I'm telling you right now, I wish you had been there, because I was the doula and the dad.
Yes, Daddy
postpartum.
doula.
And I'll tell you, I work with babies, and I work in the hospital environment all the time.
Mm-hmm.
We do not talk about the post-birth portion of this. And I think in our Western culture, particularly in the United States, we push women to get back to work and back to taking care of the other kids or taking care of the household so fast that we lead to a lot of problems and a lot of dangers, particularly in people of color, because they're pushed so hard, and the rush to get back to work may lead you to a medical problem. It's also for people who have multiple children or want to have multiple children. If you don't heal right from this experience, then you notice the second pregnancy or the third pregnancy or subsequent pregnancies, you have more and more problems. A lot of that could be carryover or scar tissue or leftover from not getting to heal right. We take it as a badge of courage. I went back to work 6 weeks after. It's like, that's not best for anyone.
Okay, I'm saying that for everybody in the back. I'm trying to tell you that badge of honor for Oh, well, it was really hard for other people. Well, okay, well, listen, I'm gonna have to tell you, I don't like hard. If it could be easy, show me to the easy.
Yes.
Okay. And that is what I encourage all the birthers to do. After you give birth, you done already did hard. You need to find easy. And so I totally agree. I think that is such a cultural thing. We definitely live in a culture where all birthers really are given this mindset where toughness means that you are going back and doing these things. And to me, toughness is knowing when to ask for help, right? You got you show your power when you're like, hey, look, in order for me to be the best for my family right now in this season, I need assistance. And honestly, if we take time to take value, like take stock of the people in our life, typically we have people who do want to support us. It's the vocalization and giving specific tasks. And people like, because oftentimes, like, oh well, I don't want to ask for help. Like, they told you they want to help you. Just give them a thing. Give them something that makes sense for them to do, that is tangible. And so I think that oftentimes those are the things that we're missing. Like, because our culture tells us that we need to get up and go, when it's time to, I'm trying to tell you, it's like pulling teeth sometimes, talking to families like, okay, well, your mom says she wants to help. What can we get her to help with? Well, I don't know. Well, oh, listen, she gonna do something, and I guarantee you that. Especially if it's the first grandchild, she gonna be involved, and so you might as well give some tasks.
She's gonna be there.
Pick the tasks you want her to have. Pick the tasks that make your life easier. Don't let her pick, because then you're gonna get annoyed, and it's a whole different problem.
Yes, especially for like my newlywed couples and stuff like that. I tell them all the time, if this is the first grandbaby, you are not going to be able to keep grandmas away, and grandfathers too, but grandmas specifically, when they are, they get that first grandbaby. Oh my goodness! And so you just give them something to do. And there's plenty to go around in the postpartum season. There's so many things that you're going to need assistance with. And even if you feel like you could do it, it's okay. This is a season in your life where it is very appropriate for you to get assistance. And probably one of the only seasons where people are going to be like, yeah, I want to help. One, because they see and know, right? Oftentimes, I also see where, because society pushes us, we forget that other people are still going through this experience, meaning that I have so many moms that are like, I wish that my mom friends would have told me that this was what postpartum was like, right? But because we're all pushed to be so tough, so strong, we don't even talk about the fact that, oh my gosh, like I had mastitis, or, I'm trying to breastfeed my baby and I don't know how to get them to latch, or I'm trying to, heal, my postpartum body and I don't even know what resources to buy at Target, simple things. Like, where if I knew that my friend was also going through the same thing and we could talk about it, it would change the dynamic extremely, right? But unfortunately, we're all taught to like tough it out, and not knowing that we all having a tough time with it. Like, okay, let's just talk about it, because honestly, it's just hard. No matter who's doing it, it is a hard process. So instead of pretending it's not hard, let's all talk about how hard it is, so we at least normalize the hard.
And everybody wants to pretend it's easy. Everybody wants to pretend like I'm doing it and it's not a big deal. And the truth is,
it's hard.
You're doing everybody a disservice. And this idea that you're supposed to go back to the life you had before, you're not a couple anymore. You're a family.
Yes.
You're not the same person you were before you had a kid. This baby is now part of your life permanently. That life is different.
Yes.
It's not gone, but it's different and is never going to be the same. So this idea that we got to get back to what we were before, no, we have to establish what we love about where we are now.
Yes, and where we're going, and that's the beautiful thing. You're writing a new story, even when you already have children and you add another child. So one of the things that isn't talked about as widely in the birthwork community, more and more, maybe more recently, is sibling doula care, right? So what does it look like to successfully transition a new baby into a home with an existing child, right? This is a thing, right?
Yeah, Dot just went to go do this, literally.
My other daughter is going through that right now.
Yeah,
she just had a baby. Yeah.
So it is. So when we talk, so my undergrad, I did family child development, and I specifically focused on like the development of children, but how it looks to develop a family unit, right? And so I love doula sibling care, and what I really focus on with my clients, because one of my clients, she has 9 kids. I kid you not. And I was there for 6 of her children as her doula. And the funniest part about this, guys, is that she has 8 boys and 1 girl.
Oh, wow.
And her husband, they have since told me that they're finished. I told them that I believe it if we go a couple years without a baby. So, but they have 9 kids, and every time I go to their home, it's just such a lively place. But what I remind her of every time we did have a child together is that you are still experiencing a new normal. Because while you have kids, you don't have this amount of kids and this personality, right? Because people think of babies like objects, not like people sometimes. This baby is a baby, but it comes with all kind of personality and sass. And the babies have the nerve to even like stuff and not like stuff. Like, you don't have a favorite pacifier. You are a baby. You just take the, but they do. They come with these nuances because they're not just objects. They are humans. They have preferences. They have things that they want to do. All of that wrapped up into this one little bundle. And so, yeah, you're bringing a new baby home, but you're bringing a new force into that home with a new personality. And you want to make sure that the kids that are already in that home feel like this is us welcoming somebody else into our family. And so we talk a lot about language, like, okay, making sure that we're not saying, oh, well, you can't do that because that hurts the baby. Mommy can't do this because of the baby. Like making sure we use words that help them to say, encourage the production of a family unit. We're working together. This is our baby. Mom's, taking care of our baby for now. When this baby comes home, it's going to be our responsibility to show them the culture of this family, how we operate. And so just really making sure we tie in those nuances. But yeah, because it's layered, right? The experience of anybody building a family is so layered. And I think that we do a disservice in our medical field when we only look at the medical side of bringing a baby home. Like there's so many other nuances that come to bringing a baby home, and we only are looking at birthers of like, oh, okay, well, what's your blood pressure, or how much weight have you gained? Okay, well, go home. Like when that's the only questions that we're asking, we run the risk of terribly, terribly getting this wrong. And so, yeah, I totally agree.
And take those older children and give them jobs and opportunities to contribute the same as you do some of your family members, but be very specific about what you give them and set them up to succeed and be supportive parts of this and be included, as opposed to like, don't just give them a random assignment and see how they do with it, but like get them involved, especially the older that child is. Like, for example, somebody who has 9 kids, that means several of them are old enough to really help in a dramatic way. This is, and it may not be with the baby. It may be take your other siblings and can you guys do this? Can you play together? Can you help them with the beginning parts of their homework? And then I'll come in just to alleviate and create that family dynamic.
Exactly. Yeah. And it creates a place where it makes sense that as a family, we work together. And that's really all it. We're just saying, hey, as a family, we all have roles, we work together. And I think that is 100% something that if we did that more at home, we might have to see more of that in society. So I totally agree. And I think that with the kids, we also see the nuance of like, helping the parents to remember that they still feel the love, right? I find that my parents who have multiple kids, when they first have that, either that second kid, that third kid, they feel like, how am I going to separate and share this love, right? And so when they have those assignments and you're able to reward them or to celebrate them, they remember like, yes, my parents have a new baby, but they're still they have enough love for me. So giving them those assignments or things to do to help with the family, but then also like creating a system to reward them and celebrate them to make sure that they still feel like they're, a very productive part of that family. So yeah.
I like that.
I do too.
I like that. I like the word our. This is our responsibility, or this is our new, baby or whatever, because that's when you're including everyone.
Yeah.
And your other kids that, may not accept it as well. When you put it like that, I think they will accept it a little bit better, because you're saying you are just as important as the newborn. This is part of your family too. Exactly. We're all in this together. So I like that.
And you have to be reminded too, because when you're a mom bringing your kid home, you're like, there's a lot of things you're checked out at that point, and you don't, like you were saying, checking in with yourself or just checking in because you're just kind of in that like mode where it's like, baby, or do I need sleep or whatever. It's like those two things. So I do love the idea of just like coming through in the post world too, because we do, because I personally, and I think you and I talked about this on the phone, But I didn't know I was going through some postpartum stuff because I was so in the moment that in hindsight, I was like, maybe I would, like, because, and I've said this before on the show, it's when you go to the doctors a lot, it's like, do you want to kill yourself or the baby? No? Okay, well then you're fine. And it's like, there's so much more to that. And you've said it very clearly, but it's anything from like your body or healing or, you know, feeling exhausted or this is your new norm now and, you know, etc. So it's really important for that post, like,
It is. I mean, and I tell people when you're looking at doula care, if you can afford or if you can find resources via like insurance or a lot of the different states now are rolling out different pilot programs to see if like how it could work for Medicaid to provide reimbursement in order for it to be more accessible to people. I will say it's not super successful yet. I have hope, but they are, you know, working out some kinks because when it comes to doula care, a lot of it also depends on regionally, like how much reimbursement should be, what are the things, you know, all of that kind of stuff. So there is in the works. I tell people 2026, I'll give it to them that I think that by then we should probably have a system that we're all kind of behind. But with that, I do tell people if you can afford it, you know, look at doing birth doula services. But if that's hard for you to obtain, a lot of hospitals do have childbirth ed classes. Now, I will say that it's not the same as having a doula, especially if you're going to have a hospital birth. If you're in a hospital as a Black and brown mom, you need to have a doula there, or you need at least to have some educational basis, meaning that you can take a class, you can do something, you can read a book. Like, even though because depending on the price point in your area, doula care is not always covered under insurance, which makes it a little bit, it lacks tangibility for some people when
Right.
you can't get it paid for through your insurance. And so, but that doesn't mean you shouldn't do anything. But I do advocate for the fact that if you can't have somebody doing birth, you need somebody doing postpartum. This particular mom that I'm talking about, I remember after this had to be like baby number 4 or 5 because I knew it was like right in the middle. Like I had known her for a while because we've known each other literally 13 years now. And so when we first got home, this was kind of right before COVID, but it was something. I remember that something about COVID had just kind of came out, and so we were talking about it, and just kind of talking about what it would look like for her to have support because her mom couldn't travel, things like that. And so I would go in and I would get to the house at about 8 p.m., 9 p.m. each day. We would do a debrief. I would talk to her, and even just sometimes talking to somebody. Okay, you at home, kids all day. Can I have some adult conversation? Like, you are a person who can speak full sentences. Can we talk? And so I would come in for about 30 minutes. Me and her would just talk about her day, how she was feeling. I would check on her body. So, okay, have you had any headaches today? Any blurred vision? Have you been breathing well? Any tingling sensations? That kind of thing. We do a body scan just to kind of see how she was doing. And then I'll put her to sleep. I'm like, okay, let me take the baby. You lay down. And then I would go get all the rest of the kids ready for bed. We would get their school clothes laid out. We would do bath time. I would overnight after I got everybody laid down, me and the baby would be down in the living room. I would cook meals for the next day, make sure the kids had lunches, make sure that she had breakfast to get her day started in the morning. And then I would leave the house at like 5 or 6 a.m. And so like a little fairy, somebody who came in to get you set up for success for the day, right? And I'm trying to tell you, that was the first time she experienced postpartum. So I had been there for a couple of kids for birth before that, but this was our first postpartum experience. And I remember I had only been at her house maybe a week. I had been coming overnight for like 3 or 4 nights, and I came in, and as soon as she opened the door, she just started bawling, and I'm like, kind of, what's going on? Is something wrong? I was, of course, startled and concerned. And she's like, Brandie, I just got off the phone. My sister, who also just had a baby, and we were just talking about our postpartum experiences and the contrast of, the difficulties that her sister had been experiencing and how she felt like for the first time she was flourishing in her postpartum. Like, she's like, these were things that I didn't even know were causing me such anxiety or causing me to be, in such a stage of like, I don't know what to do. But she's like, now this postpartum experience has been so different. She's like, I told my sister like the things that you do, and she's like upset that she doesn't have a doula. I'm like, yeah, when you have somebody to do these things, because you shouldn't just be struggling through it, right? Let's help you thrive. Because honestly, you know, and her husband, wonderful man. He, you know, doing the best to provide for the family. He took some time off and was very helpful, especially for the first couple of weeks. But y'all got a family of about 11 people. So he said, baby, listen, I want to help, but I do need my help is I got to go ahead and get back to work. And that's understandable. All family makeups are different. And so that was one of the times when working with a family that I felt like, okay, this we're on to something, right? So that was one of the times where I'm like, it's one thing when you your first baby, we know because there's so much education, right? But she had baby number 5. She didn't need me to tell her how to breastfeed. She didn't need me to explain to her how many loads of laundry she was gonna be doing now. She didn't need those explanations, but she needed a person. She needed an extra set of hands. She needed to feel safe and comforted by the fact that you can go to bed and I'm going to make sure that the kids get to bed, and we're going to make sure that lunches are ready for the morning. We're going to make sure when you wake up, you have nutrition to put into your body before you then are thinking about taking care of this little one. And so for me, that changed the dynamic of how I view postpartum, because for so long, I viewed it as such a great opportunity for first-time parents because they needed so much education. Oftentimes, my first-time parents are like, okay, like how do I diaper, or what's appropriate for burping, or you know, what's a good schedule for breastfeeding or bottle feeding. And so a lot of that is education. But when I seen that the power of postpartum and planning and being a resource was just as helpful for somebody who's had 5 babies as it is for somebody who's had one, I was able to understand this is a place where we need to spend some more time.
That is true, because I literally just got back a couple weeks ago from a 5-week, pretty much postpartum after my daughter had her second baby.
Yeah.
And some of the things that you're saying, I was actually doing those things, you know, to help her out. And you know, it's sad, but it's good with your position, because sometimes they just want just a few minutes to themselves. You know, they don't have to necessarily do anything, or, you know, maybe want to take a little nap. But I noticed that with her, sometimes it was just the, I have the baby where she can breathe. You know what I mean? And it is important, because it's rough. I didn't really have that when I had Jada. You know, that was back in the day. I don't even know if doulas existed back then.
Yeah, well, historically, you said it, Mama, that moms and grandmas are historically doulas, right? That's where the idea of doulas comes kind of out of this midwifery model of care, especially here in America, where we look at our granny midwives, right? We look at, you know, midwifery during slavery and what the model of care that came out of that. And typically, we're looking at somebody who's assisting the midwife that's doing some of those before things or after things to help. But oftentimes that was like a cousin, an auntie, a grandmother. And so that model of care definitely developed from there. And so you probably won't see, you know, a specific doula, but I tell people all the time, I guarantee if you look back in either your lineage, culturally, whatever, every culture has some reference to a doula-esque person, right? And so somebody who was just kind of there helping out, and then over time, of course, has developed to, you know, a career path. But yeah, looking back, I always tell people about things like my aunt. Well, in general within my family, there is a like coming home with baby kind of way that, you know, families do it, right? And so historically, my great grandmother had always been a person who kind of got a kit together for you for postpartum, and would make a huge pot of soup and bring it over to the house and help for a couple days, and you know, that kind of thing. And when she passed away when I was younger, my aunt, it was her role. So every matriarch of my family has now become the person who does that thing. And recently, my aunt, she about 2 or 3 years ago, she passed, and so my next in line is 12 of them, and so we got a pretty good procession going. So the next woman that is the matriarch of our family, she actually, for the first time, we just welcomed a new baby into our family, and so this was her first time kind of taking on that role. And so we talked about the fact that within our family, like, even though when I told them I was a doula, they didn't know what that meant, but when I talked to them about the type of care, they understood that, because that's very cultural, like families and helping out and being there, like that's something that people can definitely can hold on to. I think the unfortunate truth is because we're such a go society, sometimes we don't have people who have that time anymore. Family members are often working, where we have people who had a retirement age. Now it's not real. People, a lot of people's moms and dads are still working well into, they get into those upper ages. And as a result, they don't have the ability to just, be there 5 weeks and kind of help out and love on those grandbabies and make sure that they have that. So I definitely think that within our culture it's there, but it definitely looks a little bit different.
And I feel blessed that I do have the flexibility to help both of my girls. Yeah. And, because like you said, some people just don't always have that type of ability to do that. But I am blessed to be able to do that. And of course.
And they blessed too. I'm sure they both appreciated it.
They do. They definitely do. Yeah. And it's just something that as a grandparent, you want to do things that can, that can help them and to help relieve them of whatever stress that they may be going through, because it's hard,
Yeah.
It's definitely hard. So, I mean, regardless, it's like, even if Jada, she wanted to go somewhere or whatever, like, matter of fact, I'm having the kids tonight, so.
I know that's right. Brandie to the rescue.
but that's my point. It's just, it doesn't matter what you're doing. If you had anything planned, sometimes you don't have anything planned. Sometimes you just want that peace by yourself.
It's important.
Yeah, it is. And then it also gives me time to even bond more with my grandkids.
Exactly. It's a special kind of love that a grandma gives.
Yeah, exactly. And I had, a great grandmother in my life, and I know the importance of grandmother roles.
Yeah.
Because I had a great one, a great role back then when I was younger.
Yeah. One of the things, so one of my favorite little things to share. So my grandma, one of my favorite people, my grandparents are like I call them my biffles. And so we're super, super close. My grandparents are, just such a large part of like my upbringing, as well as like my choice to be like very specific and caring for people. They've just shown me so many things. So my first job ever, I was 14, and my grandfather was the director at a homeless shelter in the inner city of Detroit. So my first job, I worked there, and he had me putting together a curriculum for a children's program. And I remember working there, and my first of all, who at 14 has a job? Like, where are you? I'm going to work. They're like, where are you working at? And I took my job so serious because I got to see on display my grandfather really put his passion out there for people in transitional and hard seasons. And that was my first time encountering, just that kind of need, right? And being able to see that need is not a bad thing. I think, unfortunately, sometimes societally, if we say we need something, it's seen like as a weakness. But it was my introduction to people in transition and people in need. And it really, really shaped my view of what help is. And I think that is imperative for doulas. You have to have a worldview that does not look at people needing help as a bad thing. You have to look at people needing help as a way for us to show up for each other, right? So community is important. None of us can really function as much as we would think we do or want to as solo. We all are a part of these, families that are then a part of these other, spaces of like maybe where we went to high school or where we went to university or church groups or, sororities, fraternities. Like, we're a part of these ecosystems, and it's important that, we allow them to support us and when we're training doulas. And so that's one of the things that I really want to make sure that we're pushing it and letting people know there is a way to get trained to support these families, right? So if this is not something that you either know about, if this is not something that you find tangible within your family, going and getting that training. One of my very best friends, we've known each other since we were 10 years old. He and his wife had a baby. He's 4 now, out in Missouri. And so I flew out there. Well, I was their doula. So he lived here in Atlanta for some time. So they came down here for one of their sessions, and I flew to Missouri for a couple of other sessions. And then I flew out there when it was time to have baby. Unfortunately, they had a hard labor. The pregnancy was actually, she was a very fit mom, super active, but the labor and delivery was a little difficult. And the hospital we were in was a bit difficult as well. And we experienced some racism while there. And so as a result, he was like, Brandie, if my wife ever has a baby again, I want to know how to show up and I want to make sure I know. So he trained with me. And so now he is what we call the dad's doula. And we have a nonprofit arm where he and I have created a curriculum specifically for dads, teaching them how to show up in the birth workspace. Like, what does it look like to be there if you're doing a home birth or a hospital birth? How do you help your partner establish your team? What are specific and tangible ways for you to do things for your partner? Like, okay, putting affirmations on sticky notes and putting them around the house so she finds them, making sure you get that birthing ball or all those tools that are going to make labor as easy as possible. And so, yeah, we encourage people who are interested, who might not know how they can show up, or just interested in this as a career path. Like I said, all I knew was I wanted to help people, and I love people in transition. And so this is a very great source, even for people who are doing other things within the helping profession. We have quite a few nurses that come through and train with us. We've had OBs that come through, chiropractors, and most recently we have had quite a few different just medical students in general come through to train with us. And we always encourage people, because the medical model of care is one way, and we just want to make sure you also can see the other side. So when you're working with clients, you can be as empathetic as possible. And so no matter social work, I've had a lot of social workers come through our program. And so, yeah, if you're interested in this as a career path, and or if you're interested in adding this knowledge to your team or for yourself, I always tell people, take a training. It's valuable information, whether you're going to use it and actually work with families on a daily basis, or if you have a partner that you want to make sure you have the resources to, effectively be there for them.
Is that a certificate program that you have?
Yeah, so we are accredited. So we're actually the number one training organization in the world for Black and Brown doulas. Yeah, and so our training is accredited. You can use it in any of the states, and then you can use it internationally. Not because we're necessarily accredited with international, but because in other countries, you don't have to have a certificate to be a doula, right? And so you can use it anywhere in the world. And we do offer our trainings in a variety of formats. We have fully virtual training. We also have hybrid models where we have people come in to birth centers or different places so they can experience, what it might be like. And then we have an in-person. And so we offer it typically over a weekend, Friday, Saturday, Sunday. They come in, they do their hands-on, or they do their training. And then we have a mentorship component that's about 3 months long. We have 10 different doulas on our staff, and they're all throughout the United States. And they offer mentorship and kind of help us to train up these amazing doulas. And then, we help to kind of get them out there. You make sure that they have the adequate marketing, things like that, or know how to, get that their foot in the door per se. And so, yeah, it's a certificate program that can be used anywhere in the United States. Now with the new rollout of things with Medicaid, we're also working to make sure that as Medicaid is deeming who they're willing to reimburse for certain things, that our name is on those provider lists. Because as Medicaid is rolling things out, they're going to be the ones who say, hey, you have to train with this organization to be able to get Medicaid funds. And so we have a relationship with Medicaid in the different states. As they roll things out, we right behind them. Like, okay, you rolled it out, let's get on that list. Because we want to make sure that this type of care is accessible, right? We understand that while some people currently don't have the means to get the care based on their insurance, that these things are trickling down. And we want to make sure that no matter what community that you're in, everybody deserves a doula, no matter the price point. Now, there are people who are right now actively able to take part in doula care, but there are others who want doulas and might not be able to afford them. So we're trying to make sure we keep our pulse on, things as they're changing. But yeah, our training super accessible. Now the association, the National Black Doulas Association, is specific to Black doulas, and right now we have about 300 doulas. We're hoping to end the year with roughly 400 doulas strong, and that's a goal of ours. It's just and that's inside of the association. They might have been doulas for years and years. years. Some of them are newer doulas. And that's the association. And that's to make sure Black and brown doulas have a safe space, right? Doing birth work as somebody who might not be listened to can be traumatic sometimes, right? I'm a Black woman, you're a Black woman, we're trying to advocate for your rights. Sometimes you're going to experience some trauma from being in those birth settings as well. So we want to make sure that they have a space to adequately voice that we can talk about it. So we have monthly meetups where we go over like peer-to-peer. We talk about like tough births that we might have had. We co-work with each other. We do marketing, advertising. And then every month we have a person come in to teach a skill, right? So we call them our masterclass series. And so like this August, actually, the end of August is Black Breastfeeding Week. And so we have a international board certified lactation specialist coming in. And she's going to talk about, just some of the tips and tricks when it comes to breastfeeding. And so we do that on a monthly basis, and that's for our association members. People can join the association right from the website if they're already a doula. But then when it comes to the reason I mention that is because oftentimes people because it's the National Black Doulas Association, they think they can't train with us, but we train everybody. And our reasoning is that the curriculum is for everybody. Even though it centers Black and brown bodies and faces, we think that everybody needs to have something that teaches from the scope of like, hey, if you're treating Black and brown bodies, you need to know these things, right? So we teach people all over the world, throughout the United States and overseas. And our teachings are grounded in, hey, this is the baseline for what care we want our mothers to receive. And these are some of the advocacy pieces that you really need to hone in on for Black and brown bodies. But we want and encourage people from any walk of life to come and train with us for that reason, because this is something everybody should know. While the association is specific to Black and brown doulas, because that's, having a safe space that's set apart, the training organization or the training part to our organization is open to everybody. And we encourage people from all walks of life to take that training, because you need that knowledge.
How do we get in touch with you for that training?
Yeah, and so our website is blackdoulas.org, real simple. And then my email is hello@blackdoulas.org. So on the website, if you have questions, right at the bottom of the screen, there's a place where you can send us a message. It'll come straight to my email, or you can email us directly. And I will also say for families, right? So say maybe you're not a doula, not interested in being a doula, but you're looking for a doula. And so for our 300 members of our association, we have vetted them, and after they join the association, they are put in our directory. And so blackdoulas.life is our directory URL. It's also linked directly through our blackdoulas.org website. But we have doulas from all over the United States with, a plethora of different specialties. Like we talked about sibling doulas, postpartum doulas, fertility doulas, all the whole gamut, right? And so on the website, you can see their pictures, their specialties, where they're located. And on a daily basis right now, traction-wise, we're getting about roughly 100 to 200 families that are looking at that website and that are finding their doulas directly on that website.
I'm going to ask you that question, because I think this is beautiful.
Yeah.
I don't think we acknowledge enough, particularly in this country. We act as if birth is an easy thing, or as if the mortality rate is a non-issue.
Yeah.
And I think it's such a hard conversation, but I do think it's really important, because a doula can take this important role to increase your opportunity to have a successful outcome, and also support you should there not be.
Yeah.
Can we talk a little bit about the mortality and the challenges that are faced, and then especially the disproportionate number of challenges that are faced by people of color?
Yeah. So this is literally the whole mission. This is the reason why we do the work. We know that in America, we are in a state of emergency. Full-fledged, not like, oh, possibly. We have been and are currently in a state of emergency for Black women giving birth in America. It's a fact. We know it. The CDC has published countless, numbers. Every 2 years, they give us our mortality numbers. And the unfortunate truth is that we've been in a state of emergency for roughly almost 10 years. And in that time, year after year, it's actually not gotten better, but has gotten worse. And so we know this is a problem. right? We also, I mean, that is, of course, a problem for America, but also just in the grand scheme of globally, to be a, not to be one of the countries where they consider themselves to be third world countries. Our numbers, as America, something that is a country that's so revered and sought after sometimes, our numbers are very comparable to third world countries when we're looking at maternal mortality, right? And so that's an issue not for just Black and brown bodies, but across the board. That shows us that when we are looking at maternal mortality, we're not doing a good job. And we need to figure out how to get this system to work for the people that it's supposed to work for. Literally, within obstetrics and gynecology, a huge part of that is people having babies. And so systematically, we have a problem, right? And I think that one of the major problems is that we have over medicalized birth. So when you think about OBGYN, you think that, okay, they're a doctor, and doctors are there to treat major medical situations and or to just let you know what's going on with your body. But typically, if you're going to a hospital or if you're going to the doctor, you're going there to treat a problem. And so the unfortunate truth is, when we go to the hospital, the same is still true, right? Even if we go to the L&D wing, they see us as somebody who's coming in with a problem that they need to treat, not as somebody who's coming in with a natural progression of life, who needs to, maybe have assistance or is there to birth their baby. And so, yeah, we have so many nuances when it comes to the system that is obstetrics and gynecology. And the unfortunate truth is, one of my soapbox things that I tell people is that, like many systems in America, I'm not mad at the obstetrics and gynecology system, because if we look at its history, the system as it is can only do what it does, right? Because of how we built it. And if we look back into the history, they credit Dr. James Sims, as being the father of modern day gynecology. And one of the things that is most said about Sims is the fact that during the time where he would have been practicing, he came around during a time where there was slavery, and in order to make sure that women would be able to bear so many children, a lot of doctors would be there at slave auctions, right, to kind of do a review and make sure that, okay, this person would be a good person, to have on your field, right? And so when it came to Black and brown women during that time, there was a push to figure out some of the issues of reproductive health. And during that time, Dr. James was doing a variety of different experimental things to figure out some of the issues that women have. How would you do a repair, things like that. But the core issue is that he did this without any anesthesia, in a time where anesthesia was very much available. And the reasoning behind it became really how we built obstetrics and gynecology, and the history that we still are trying to dismantle today, which is that he didn't need to use any anesthesia because Black women don't feel pain, right? And I know that this seems like a bizarre concept to most people. That's like, that doesn't really make. But this is the hard part about that, is that it's like a bad rumor, right? The rumor got started so long ago, but because the doctor said it, so many people believed it, and it just continued to trickle down through history to where we now see in textbooks. I think it was 2020. No. It was like 2016, 17. Like one of the biggest textbook companies ever had to put out a press release apologizing, because in the textbook, this, like I said, these are not just things people are saying. Inside of the textbook, it spoke to the fact that Black and brown women might be medication seeking, meaning that they'll tell you they're in pain, but they're really not in pain. And the textbook said this. It wasn't something somebody made up. This wasn't something that people just were assuming. And so when I think about obstetrics and gynecology, and I think about the issue of maternal mortality, and I think about the numbers, and I get down to that piece, that helps me to see that this is not a person-to-person issue. I don't have an issue with any particular doctor, any particular nurse. I feel like you work within the confines that you're given. And because the system that they're a part of says that Black women don't feel pain, it makes it very hard to hear somebody. when they're coming to you and saying they're in pain. If you have been taught by a textbook, by your preceptors, or you are in a system that says this is how you respond to such. And so I think that we have to take a really hard look at the system that we've created, and stop telling that system to do what it's not capable of. The system that did hundreds and hundreds of experimental surgeries on slave women without their consent, without any anesthesia, is not a system that's going to take really, really good care of its ancestors, right? And so I think that we just have to really take a look at socially what, because when we look at countries around the world, when we think about people who are taking really good care of the women and the children, you tend to see a culture that has a little bit more peace. Because if you put women and children first, you are trying to really isolate and put at the forefront the people who might need support. And unfortunately, that's not necessarily guides we use here in America. Always. I'm not saying we're doing terrible with everything, but I will say for sure this is something that we all could be, looking towards doing a lot better at. But I think that that's the primary reason, is that we have a system, and instead of saying that, oh, this system is broken, let's fix it, or let's, create a new system, I find within the birth work space that people instead get mad at specific people, like, oh, that doctor is this. And I'm one of those people that's like, okay, that doctor might have done something incorrectly. Like, by all means, I've seen it, I've experienced it, both personally and as a doula. But what I find to be true is that it's hard to deviate from a system. Like, if at your hospital, this is the way you do it, that's the way you do it, And so we can't get mad at the doctor per se. We need to look at the hospital system. Why is that the way we do it, right? And so I think that yeah, we have to ask ourselves some really hard questions. Why is it that we're a developed nation with the same numbers as a third world country when it comes to maternal mortality in general? And then specifically looking at, okay, not only is this hard for any woman, but when you look at Black and brown women, it's as if, nobody is in a position of caring to make sure these bodies are well cared for. And there's a lot of schools of thought, but I tell people all the time, it always boils down to a level of racism that was already indoctrinated into obstetrics and gynecology, meaning that no matter what we do sometimes, because the system is what it is, it can be hard to change it, right? And so that advocacy piece is so, so important. And some other training organizations tend to downplay advocacy just because it's hard, because you don't want to take your client's voice. And when I say advocacy, I'm not saying, well, like not letting her, the birth speak up for themselves, or not empowering them to, be able to be that person, but understanding that sometimes as a Black or brown person within the confines of obstetrics and gynecology, when you're trying to labor, or when you are going to the hospital, this is a great example. Oftentimes when I have clients, I tell them, even if they have never had blood pressure issues, nothing like that, I always tell the partner, every time y'all go to the doctor, I want you to document what the blood pressure is. And the reason is, and this is so tangible, because when I go to the doctor, they're typically taking a snapshot of what I am today. They're not looking at the storybook of my pregnancy, right? Meaning that one of the issues that Black and brown women suffer from the most during pregnancy is preeclampsia. This is well known, well documented, scientifically backed. We know Black women have issues with preeclampsia, both during pregnancy, but often people don't know also, and there you go, and postpartum. This is an issue. And one of the ways that I try to get my families ready to combat it is, every time you go to the doctor, I want you to put on your notepad what your blood pressure was. And the reason is, I need you to see it stacking up, because with preeclampsia, people will lead you to believe it just happens out of nowhere. Like, you can't prevent it, it just happens. Okay, this is true. Not every time that something goes astray can you control it. But with preeclampsia, oftentimes we see a slow trend where last week it was a little bit higher, the next week it's a little bit higher, but doctors don't tell you, oh, we have an issue, because they're only looking at the blood pressure from that day, which is still within the range, right?
Or the last one, right? And it doesn't look like it changed that much.
Exactly.
But
You're
over
like,
the
oh,
course
you're
of
fine.
the
Yep, it's not
pregnancy,
above this number. It's still within that. It's not too far off from last week. Not knowing that from the first time to at 36 weeks, this is way higher, and we need to address it. Instead, we're like, oh, I don't know, at 38 weeks pregnant, when you come down with full-blown preeclampsia instead of just like some kind of hypertension, they're like, oh, I don't know what we could have done to make this easier or better for you. And so some of this is just tools that we have to honestly put in our hands. And that's such a tangible way for you to help in your healthcare, right? I'm just going to put in the note section what my blood pressure was. So each time I go, me and the doctor can look at, okay, how much has increased or decreased. That way I have a good hold on, okay, where am I going within this pregnancy? So, little things like that, right? Little ways for us to really address and make it tangible for these families to be a part of their healthcare. But yeah, solution wise, because I do like to be a solution focused person, I do think that the role of a doula is multi-layered for sure. I am of the school of thought that doulas are not the solution for all of it, right? We are here. The numbers don't lie when it comes to science. Having a doula 110% changes your birth outcomes, C-sections, inductions, postpartum, like all of the numbers are there. We know that the help is dramatically changing things within the birth workspace, but that can't be the only change. We have to make change on a lot of other systematic levels, right? And I think that having people well represented, right? So in general, we know representation matters. So when we're making decisions, and that's why we're so eager to work with, like, Humana, Aetna, Blue Cross Blue Shield, some of the Medicaid providers, because we want to be at the table having these conversations. We don't want you deciding for us, well, this is how much, or this is what care you deserve. Like, no, talk to moms who have really had these experiences. Hundreds and thousands of them are out there. Talk to people, understand. And I think that is what really separates that relationship, doula to client, than it does from patient to doctor. I leave knowing my clients. I know what they like. I know what they don't like. I know their mama get on their nerves. I know that she upset that her cousin coming. Like, I know these things. These are the things that make up this person. And when you talk to people and you truly get an understanding of who you're supporting, who you're building this system for, you build a better system. The unfortunate part is we're not talking to the people the system is built for. We're not making sure that the people who are having the biggest problem have the loudest voice.
Yeah, and you need an advocate. I mean, this is something we talk about a lot in this program, and it's one of the reasons why we want to have you on is
right.
You have to be your own best advocate, and you have to find people in your medical care that are advocates and are like-minded and are listening to the details. And a doula is a powerful resource for you. Mm-hmm. And your organization is a powerful resource for people who want to become resources and advocates, or for people who are seeking them.
Exactly. Yeah. And that's ultimately, that's the goal. We want as many people as need doulas to be able to find one, and as many people as want to become doulas to be able to, do that training. 2025, we are rolling out a programming for parents, right? So some fatherhood programming, as well as, different classes for our families to take advantage of as well. That'll be newer for us, but we have seen a need to engage our families. Our first kind of nod to this is that for Black Breastfeeding Week, we are having a celebration. We're calling it Chocolate Milk and Cookies, and we have gotten together some of the best chiropractors, pelvic floor specialists, OBs, midwives, doulas in the local area here in Metro Atlanta, and we're gonna celebrate with ice cream trucks and bounce houses for kids and all kind of stuff, just to really highlight the fact that these are important things, and we want to make sure families feel celebrated. Mm-hmm.
Thank you.
I love it. Thank you so much. Like, I mean, this is just eye-opening.
Yeah,
and
very educational.
Very educational.
We always learn something doing this, and this is great to have this information.
Definitely. I feel so honored for sure. I mean, after you guys reached out looking into the podcast, I'm like, this is that. I don't know how it missed me, but I'm glad that it found me. So I'm excited to become an avid listener myself. And so I'm grateful for the opportunity.
Thank you. And we're grateful that you had the availability to join us.
We're going to get the word out there. Any means necessary, right?
Listeners, because this is some powerful stuff right here.
Mm-hmm. It is, and it's necessary. Yeah,
that's much needed. That absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you so much, Brandie.
Thank you, Brandie. And everybody can look up your website and connect with you. And
blackdoulas.org. You can find everything that you need. You can find our trainings. You can find our directory. You can find ways to partner with us. You can find ways to donate. We do have a scholarship fund. So for those who can't afford to become a doula outright, we do have a fund where, people donate and we're able to give partial scholarships. We also can help sometimes with doula reimbursement for clients. We have like someone who is low income, but they might need a doula. If we're able to find one in their local area, we can help with some scholarship funds. And so donations, trainings, all of the above, you can find it right on our website, blackdoulas.org.
Amazing.
Oh,
yeah.
Thank you so much.
Brandie.
Thank you guys. This has been so great.
Thank you. And
stay cool.
Yeah.
I'm gonna try, and you guys let me know if there's anything I can do on my part. Yeah, as you guys are pubbing or marketing, all that kind of stuff, we can put it on our Instagram, our TikTok, that kind of thing.
Oh, that would be awesome.
Yeah, for sure. We still growing. We have a goal to get to 50K by the end of the year. I think we have like 47 or something like that. So we're trying to grow our power on social media as well to kind of help keep getting the word out there.
And you can tell everybody your handles too. What's your social media?
National Black Doulas. Yeah, I'm excited to be in community with you all now. And I any way I can support in the future, just let me know.
Thank
Likewise.
you. You're amazing.
Likewise. Yep.
Thank you.
Have a good one.
Thank you.
Bye.
That was amazing.
That was awesome. Yeah. That was some serious information right there.
I had to touch the mortality thing because it's such a big, I don't know, it's because I spend all the time in the hospital, but I also do see a disproportionate impact to women of color. And I have unfortunately seen a difference sometimes in care.
Mm-hmm.
And that's one of those things that we're doing a better job, but it is something that needs to be noticed.
Yeah, you're right, Michael.
I mean, that's what Serena Williams.
Yeah.
And a lot of those people now have been getting doulas and stuff now to be their support. And I love the way she says, like, we're having a baby. So
I like
it's like
that.
they're fully involved in the entire process, and not just like birth. It's like, I got to, get to know the family. Yeah.
This is your brother or sister.
Yeah, like I love that.
I like the way she actually included everyone to make them feel, special in the participation and easier for them to, actually accept the newborn.
Mm-hmm.
So, this was very enlightening. I enjoyed it.
Yeah. Wow.
This is what we do.
Thanks to everyone who was listening. So
yes.
Tune in next time for the Lovesick podcast. Woohoo!